To order. First, that's not on the agenda, I want to recognize Steve Swantek's time on the Renaissance Zone Authority. His term just ended. He's served us many years since 2006. And if this is recorded for Steve, I want to thank him for that service and for everything that he's done for our community and still continues to do, serving as a legislator. So he's positively impacted our city of Fargo. We appreciate his years of term on the term and his expertise. I've known Steve since I was a little girl. We went to school together, so I know his family, and I heard that his mother has had a fall, so let's keep her in our thoughts and our prayers. So, meeting was called to order. We have the minutes of the December 21st meeting in front of us. Has everyone had a chance to review? Do I have a motion for approval?
I so move.
Is there a second?
Second.
Any discussion? If none, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Same sign. Nay. Okay, motion carries. In those minutes, we had approved the new legislation for 8 years, which ended up not moving forward. Is there anything that needs to be done, Megan, to move forward? Or is that going to be later in our agenda?
So for the 8-year, what was needed was support from the Fargo School District as well as Cass County. The school district did give support for it, but the Cass County did not make a motion, and so therefore in turn it wasn't supported, and so it kind of ended there. And so I think one of the things that we're hopeful to discuss with the update to the development plan is to come back to that, bring that up as a topic again.
Okay. And so the project that we had moved forward to the city commission then just went with the 5-year as
correct.
previously stated.
Correct.
Okay, thank you. Second on the agenda, we will review the application from Campsite 4 LLC. It's located at 5 14th Street North. I drove by that this morning. I would encourage each of you to take a quick look at it if you have not done so. Go ahead. And you posed a lot of questions for us in the summary, so this will be interesting.
Good morning, Chairperson and Board. I'm Megan Elshaug from the Planning Department. So this is an application the Planning Department received, Campsite 4 LLC at 5 14th Street North, so it's just on the fringe of the downtown area. The application is for a rehab project of an existing building. The intent is to rehab the almost 9,800 square foot building, single story. Actually, it's not a single story. There is, I believe, a mezzanine or a basement for commercial use. It's been most recently used as a industrial contractor or commercial contractor at that building. The current building value is $643,000. The proposed investment is $1.5 million. That equates to about $153 per square foot, and as well as nearly doubles the amount of the full and true value of the building. And so it does meet minimum threshold requirements. Just as a quick note for tax information, using today's current values and today's mill levy, the taxes would increase if this is approved from on the building from $9,500 to a little over $26,000. I'm going to do things a little bit differently, a little bit about the application and the site before we move forward. So this is an image of the building. This is provided by the applicant. I'll kind of run through and feel free to stop and ask any questions during the presentation. Images of the building up on your screen, and in the lower right you'll kind of see orientation. So upper left is looking towards the northeast, so you can see kind of the front of the building. Image 2 is looking at the south facade of the building. And then image 3 is looking west from the alley, the back of the building. And this is a site plan view. So you can see 14th Street on the west, NP Avenue on the south. And this shows you what is proposed with some landscaping, courtyard area, and some modifications to that back. So if you look on image 3 here, you'll see some storage sheds, things like that. And so that's proposed to be changed as well. Interior to the building, this is a proposed floor plan. And so you'll see on the left, there is a mezzanine here. And the intent is to have a couple of different or several different spaces or opportunities for businesses in here. Elevations here, so you'll see some call outs for some updates, including some new doors. And we do have the applicants here who can talk a little bit more about scope of work. And then this did receive a score of 58 out of 100 in the score chart. I'm just going to double check my score here. And there's several reasons for that that are outlined in the packet that I'll go through today. Ultimately, staff is still recommending approval, but we do have some questions and things we want to point out to the board. So I know there's some members who've been on the board for a long time. Back in 2019, when we updated the development plan, the goals, some of the primary goals we had swapped out just on the heels of the approval of the Downtown in Focus plan. Had updated to the 7 goals in the Downtown in Focus plan. And so we've seen some projects. We recognize all projects can't be all things. And so that's kind of a bigger reason where we've seen kind of a change in how that scoring works because of that. Another reason is that Block 53, which this is, identifies for redevelopment and infill. So it does deviate a little bit from, at least in 2019, what was identified for that plan. It's not a high priority land use is another item. And then similarly for, as I had mentioned, exterior improvements, because it is a rehab, was another reason for the lower score. And so this does overlap. It's on the fringe. You know, we've seen a lot of investment on First Avenue North, and we believe that we'll continue to see that investment. Downtown in Focus identifies this block as mixed use, core neighborhoods plan as industrial warehousing. So it's kind of in that, again, on that fringe area. And we know that transition will likely happen. We think that maybe the core neighborhoods plan could be a little bit more applicable than the vision in this particular area than the development plan. But again, staff is recommending approval. But we do want to ask the Renaissance Zone Authority or board some questions. And so we can open up for discussion, or we can take questions one by one. However the board wants to do it, but mainly, again, you know, how is the criteria working? Is this project in particular worthy of receiving the tax benefits? You know, as investment and redevelopment occurs west of downtown, what kinds of projects are desirable on this fringe area? How is the current criteria? Is it reflective of desirable projects? And then if should the criteria change, and if so, how? So all that being said, I'll open it up. We can take questions one by one, or open up to the board for discussion. Thank you.
Thank you. Some good discussion there, some thought of what do we want to see as criteria for our Renaissance Zone projects, you know, with a scoring change. Any comments or questions? This is the lowest score I've seen in my time on the authority.
Madam
Go
Chair,
ahead, Prakash.
I would like to see, are there some recommendations that you can make to modify this so that they can bring up the points?
Do you mean modify the scoring, Prakash?
Yeah. So there are 3 areas particularly scored very low. And do you have some recommendations as to, if you were to modify this proposal, what would be the changes that can be made?
Sure, and I don't know that staff has any recommendations kind of off the cuff. I can defer to our director, Nicole Crutchfield, if she has, but I can talk in a little bit more detail too of that scoring, in particular. The first section of the Renaissance Plan goals, which are same as the downtown goals. That is one where I've consistently seen kind of a lower score because of those topics and how they're such individual topics. And so, as I mentioned, all projects kind of can't be all things. And so, especially, for example, in a rehab project, it's very difficult to address stormwater, perhaps, you know, depending on how the site is laid out, or, you know, how the building coverage works out. So I don't have any. That's certainly something we can bring back to you in the future for discussion, but I'll ask Nicole Crutchfield if she has any thoughts.
Thanks, Megan. And I think what you'll see in the score is staff is conflicted because the one thing that Megan doesn't reference that's soon to be coming is our future growth plan. And so for those that have been part of that process, and on the next agenda item, we'll talk about that a little bit more. And so what I would say is, in terms of if you think of the holistic goals of the city of Fargo and the goals we're trying to accomplish, we think this is a good project. Our Renaissance Zone plan update, which is coming, we don't want to project what the board is going to think about that, but I think the subjectivity is obviously very real as we look at this case. So in answer to the board member's question, I think the recommendations, when we think about the downtown and focus plan, the dream and vision is maybe, really high, and maybe the market isn't quite ready for that full range of goals, right? And so there's incremental improvements over time. What makes the Renaissance Zone mandate, I guess, or the program rules difficult is it's kind of a one and done. And so what we see sometimes is developers or landowners hold that that option for a future project and maybe don't use it now. Obviously, these landowners can talk through this a little bit more in detail, but that incremental improvement is certainly something worth considering, and so we don't necessarily expect answers to all these questions today. It's just kind of the same questions we had in our office. This took a lot of deliberation between our staff members as a whole, and Megan drew the short straw to present it, but I think it makes for really good discussion. And I think if you think way back to the start of the Renaissance Zone program and some of those that have been involved a long time, we do count on you as board members to help bring us that vision that you see is appropriate for our community as well. And so it's a really long-winded answer without a lot of specifics. I apologize.
It's okay. I get that. I mean, we did start out with just the Renaissance Zone, then we add the In Focus, and now the Fargo Growth Plan. Getting those three to work together cohesively could bring challenges for us in the future as well as this. Okay, thank you. Any other questions or comments on this?
Madam Chair?
Go for it, David.
So just real quick, so this is an incremental improvement. It would have scored better if they would have added housing on top of it and had multi-use or something. Then the score would have been, at the top of and so I guess that's my perspective. This is an incremental improvement. Without a doubt, you can see the building is going to be, hopefully more efficient, energy efficient, and all those and obviously a good thing. The other thing is, so we've been on this long enough. I never envisioned that this part of town would be part of the Renaissance Zone and even consider projects like this. So it's a matter of perspective, I think. So, and I do think the other thing is we want to have an overall vision, but there's specific instances where we have to have some flexibility. I guess that's the way I would describe this, because without a doubt, this building, that's making it better, that neighborhood, and obviously the tax revenues from the perspective of us, it's going to increase. So that's a win, but to follow, it's not going to hit all the numbers because, and the other thing is now cost of building and interest rates, that has impacted what people can afford to do at this point. So I'm sorry for talking so much, but
Nope, that's okay.
kind of a summary of how I think. I don't know if you agree, Madam Chair. Thank you.
It definitely will improve that area. There are a couple houses there and then apartment buildings. I was remiss, I'm sorry to put this in the middle of this discussion, in welcoming our newest member, Brian Larson. And I was going to say for Brian's benefit, and he's probably read it all, but our minimum requirement is $40 per square foot, and this one hit $153.42. Based on what Commissioner Pepcorn said with the increasing costs of construction, this meets a lot of the standards, so.
I think, like everyone who's looked at this, I had real mixed impressions of it. I did go look at the site. And I, on the one hand, it's a great use of the building. It would activate the area. Maybe this would be a seed for starting other things, because it is surrounded by marginal industrial, with the exception of the one new apartment complex and the small single-family houses behind it. But otherwise, an older, tired industrial area. I do wonder about at night, how the safety, and particularly for women in the building, how they'll feel being surrounded by that thinly populated and old industrial. And maybe that's not the concern of this group. The part that worried me is if a critic of the Renaissance zone went and buy this, first off, they'd say, how's this even eligible? And second of all, the exterior will change only moderately, it's internal. So they'd say, what did my tax money go to? So I was really eager to hear what both staff and fellow authority members had to say, because I really am twisted. It's a sound project. If you moved it closer to downtown, I think we'd all be saying, oh, great. But where it's at in what's going to visibly change, a critic would probably find fault with. And so I continue to be open to this. I'm really looking forward to other people's thoughts and comments.
Any comments?
Chair Mathern, real quick, one other thought that staff had for consideration is, that's not reflected in the scoring, is maybe to what Commissioner Brashani was just saying, is I just lost it. The blight removal, I think, so we don't really have blight as a scoring category. And so that part of town has a lot of blight that's spoken to quite in depth in the core neighborhoods plan, and kind of trying to find that, kind of motivation to incent for. And so in fact, when you look at the core neighborhoods plan, one of the recommendations was looking at a Renaissance zone type program. And in fact, last legislative, like maybe 2 legislative sessions ago, there was an attempt of that. So that's one element just to add to the strategy of further discussions. Another would be, this comes up as a downtown in focus issue, is the need for affordable office and startup creative districts, right? And so we both we were looking as like, well, does this fit into that design district that the downtown in focus? Because again, the users of this facility, we're really excited about these startup companies, and this is the population and business folks we want to keep in Fargo, and we want to enhance, and adds to that the kind of vibrancy of the city with the creativity. And so that's another element that's not really reflected as a criteria, but when you look at the goals of the downtown in focus plan and the core neighborhood plan, we feel like this project meets those, what we're shooting for as part of that vision.
It's a good reminder to not just look at scoring, but to look at all the other benefits that a construction project might create. And I think we're going to fall into this a little bit more as our city moves west. With the Renaissance zone, there are a lot of areas that we're going to have these same issues. And as long as we keep an open mind, I think overall tax benefit I didn't see that there was a compilation of what it will be for a taxed value when this is completed. I think that's always a good answer, Mr. Brashani, of when people criticize this, that if they take a look at the finished project and how that tax base will increase.
Yep, thank you for.
It is, okay.
Yep, so just using the current values today and the current mill levy, just on the building would be, today it's about 9,500, and after, if the Renaissance zone is approved and after that benefit expires, it would be, yep,
I
almost
missed that line,
27,000.
sorry. Thank you.
No worries, thank you.
Any other discussion, any comments?
Madam Chair, would we be hearing from some feedback from Mr. Kringen and the architect?
Okay,
So based on the discussion that took place here, how would they respond to those points or weaknesses?
welcome. Please introduce yourself for the benefit of the group.
Sure. I'm Kevin Bartram with MBA Architects. We're also the current owner of the building through J Street Properties LLC. J Street owns the apartment building to the west. Max Kringen from Telwell and his associate Duncan Williamson, they're in the process of buying the building from us, so that's Campsite 4 LLC. And he can talk a little bit about their business. A couple of comments, I guess, I'm just sitting back. I didn't get a chance to read this scoring criteria till just this morning. I was out of town till then. Kind of surprised at the points. There's a couple of corrections I guess I would like to make. There is primary sector business in this property, included with the property. About a third of the building is planned to be a primary sector business as a tenant to Telwell. So I think that scoring criteria was quite low. There's other aspects of the scoring that I just am not quite sure if we're giving it more emphasis than maybe it really deserves. I mean, this property is not required to provide stormwater management. It's a small enough property. It's only about a half-acre property. But that being said, we're still taking out paving and putting in green space besides to improve the situation. But I don't know what we do to gain any points on something like that when we're not required to have stormwater management. We don't have a big enough site to put a storm pond in no matter what, even if we weren't providing some parking on site. Also, I'm trying to, the idea of being scored down because we're not making major improvements on the outside. This is a pretty substantial building that we're starting with. It's a masonry and backup structure, face brick on the outside, precast concrete structure. So to just sort of arbitrarily make improvements on the outside to get a few more points, I don't know if it really matters. I mean, you could argue whether you like tan brick or you maybe would prefer a different color brick or something like that. And we can always paint it or do something. But I'm just not quite sure about why that is such an important criteria on a building like this. We've stood before this Renaissance Zone Authority a number of times with other projects like interior fit-up projects. And I don't know how interior fit-up projects would get more points than this project would have, other than maybe it's located right on Broadway or something to that effect, or it's in a building that has housing or something along those lines. This is an existing Renaissance Zone block. We didn't request that this block be added. We have the building that's on an existing Renaissance Zone block, so it must have been targeted for some reason for improvements, and I feel like we're following through on that. With $153 a square foot for interior and exterior improvements, it's a very substantial project. I guess I'm kind of disappointed with the score that it received. I think it deserves a higher score than that. I kind of feel bad that it would be presented to the City Commission as this is the lowest score I've seen. I just don't think that's really a fair representation for this building. It's much more substantial than that. Max could talk a little bit about their company maybe and some of the improvements on the inside. It is an exciting project with single-story office, two-story volume office, some very inventive design elements inside the building. And I think it's going to be a very nice improvement to our J Street neighborhood, J Street apartment project neighborhood. And we're excited to see the project move forward.
Yeah. Good morning. This room is much more intimidating than it looks on TV. But good morning. My name is Max Kringen. I'm the chief storyteller and founder of Telwell. We are a creative studio that was born in downtown Fargo. We were born at the Prairie Den. We moved to McCormick Place on 5th Street, quickly outgrew that space, and currently we're at 1213 NP on top of what was the Prairie Roots building. With me as well is Duncan Williamson. Duncan Williamson is a partner and our senior film producer at Telwell. How we got him to move from Bozeman, Montana, where he was filming all the beautiful things, to Fargo, where just beautiful things, just much flatter, I'm not entirely sure. But I do know the draw of downtown Fargo was a big part of that. So Telwell is a 10-year-old company. We were founded in 2014, and we saw a really big need in our area as we all came from healthcare marketing backgrounds. We saw the need for more accessible access to creative services like film and video, social media strategy, things like that. I came from Sanford, where we spent a lot of money on marketing, and we knew that there was not that access for a lot of the smaller organizations. I know you guys are very familiar with FirstLink. FirstLink, who answers the National Suicide Prevention Lifeline here in North Dakota, as well as Western Minnesota. They were our very first client, and they're still a client today. So as we've talked about the growth, as we've talked about where we want to go as a company and our vision is here in downtown Fargo. I was actually a part of the In Focus steering committee in 2018. And so as we were thinking about this project, knowing that that design district was a goal of that project, this was very much a part of that. I'm not sure that we talk about it a ton in the actual application itself, but about a quarter of this building is a Creative Commons space. One thing we know as a startup 10 years ago is that there were not a lot of affordable spaces for small creative studio type organizations. Those are the 1 or 2 person film production companies, the 1 or 2 person graphic design studios, those types of things. Really, we've kind of squeezed a lot of those folks out of downtown Fargo, and a lot of those folks are working from home. They're working from coffee shops, they're working from Brewhala, they're working from some of those different spaces. Part of our goal with that Creative Commons space is to really create a home for them to grow as well as establish themselves as businesses in the very same way that we had that opportunity at the Prairie Den. As Kevin had mentioned, about a quarter of the space is also going to be farmented. I don't know if anybody has been to the downtown street fair, but if somebody has offered you a sample of kimchi or sauerkraut, that was probably farmented. Farmented is a really incredible business owned by Vanessa Williamson, Duncan's wife, who and they're on a growth trajectory. They were a part of Generator, which is an accelerator. And they've been having really incredible, substantial growth since then. So part of this building is also to create their manufacturing facility as well, which hopefully does get us a few more points in the primary sector piece, but maybe we didn't talk about that in the application as much. So with that, happy to answer any questions about Telwell, about our Creative Commons space, about Farmented that I can answer. I do know that fermented foods are very good for your gut health. But beyond that, I can probably talk more to the business than I can the actual benefits of fermented goods. So with that, happy to answer any questions about Telwell, the project, or anything else.
Anyone? Thank you, that was helpful, but Commissioner Pepcorn.
So, Madam Chair, so one thing, if it would be possible, if Mr. Bartram could meet with the planning department and just be able to go through the scoring a little bit. But part of our scoring sheet, we were just, it was our attempt to go from the subjective to the objective. And so it's not a perfect scoring sheet because we were involved in the development of it. And so I do think, and I do, this is an incremental improvement in that neighborhood. And actually, Kevin, obviously, that housing department that you've built, we would have never envisioned that 20 years from now. That's changed that neighborhood. And I believe that whole neighborhood is, and obviously with Brewhala, that whole thing is way beyond what we could envision as a Renaissance Zone Authority. I don't know if that makes sense to you, but so I just think this is obviously a good thing. Our scoring sheet, Kevin, it's not perfect. But the one thing I would say is I would like you to tell more about, you're obviously going to improve the building's heating and cooling and efficiency and things like that. That's something that maybe most people, your business, obviously that's an awesome story, but sometimes the nuts and bolts are a little more impactful to how we're spending our tax money. So I don't know if that makes sense, but it's a great project. And with that, Madam Chair, I'll make the motion just to get the conversation started. Motion to approve the project. Thank you.
We have a motion for approval. Do we have a second?
Second.
Any other discussion? And I would like to say for the record that wasn't criticism of you. This just plain was the lowest score. But we needed to have that out there so we could talk around it and understand why we'd move forward with it, so.
Yeah, and just so I'm clear, I didn't take it as criticism. I just think it just, it just deserved a few more points on a few items. And some of it is subjective. Obviously it is, but, so I'm not being critical at all. But I do think there are a few things that it could have scored higher on.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Any other discussion? If none, we'll have a roll call vote, please.
Pipcorn,
Aye.
Madell,
Aye.
Matthew,
Aye.
Larson,
Aye.
Rashani,
Aye.
Mather.
Aye. Motion carries. Congratulations. We look forward to your project coming to fruition.
Thank you, and please come visit.
Oh, we will. We like to do tours of some of the places that are completed.
Thank you.
Next on the agenda, our Renaissance Zone Development Plan update.
Thank you. So it has been 6 months since your board has met, and at that time, we provided an intro as the Renaissance Zone Development Plan has to be, well, with legislative changes, 10 years, but we're still on a 5-year track right now. And so this is our year to update the development plan, and so this is kind of our first stop here. And as a quick note, we plan to meet monthly or as needed to work through, and so we need to kind of secure that updated plan by the end of the year. And so today, we'll be talking about the investment thresholds. And feel free to stop me at any time if there's any questions. I'll kind of run through a little bit of the history and move on to what we've been seeing these last 10 years, and then we have some discussion prompts for you. So since 2014, 10 years ago, that was a year of an updated development plan. The thresholds were updated. Prior to that, from 1999 to 2014, the investment thresholds for new construction were $55 a square foot and rehab $25. So in 2014, they were updated to $100 a square foot for new construction and $40 a square foot for rehab. And so we've not seen any changes in the last 10 years or didn't make these changes in the 2019 plan. Staff put together some information that tracked. I know this is hard to see, and it's probably very hard to see in your packet, and so I've got the document open. We can zoom if we want to. But a little bit of how to look at this chart. Most of the columns on the left are just general project information, and we took projects that were approved in the last 10 years and with the 2014 or later development plan, and so under the current thresholds. So the next column is the value of improvements. The purple column is the investment and percentage of building value. That might be a little bit more applicable to rehab projects. And then moving next, so we're in between purple and green, is the project square footage. And so that's where we get our green column, the investment per square footage, and that's kind of what we'll be talking about today. So you can see the range here. There's a couple of boxes highlighted that we'll talk about in more detail. And so if we want to get into the specifics of the chart, I can pull that document up, but I just wanted to walk through a little bit of what these projects are, how to read the chart. Does anybody have any questions on the chart currently? All right. So a little bit of information, we did highlight highest levels of investment and then lowest levels of investment. And so block 9 for new construction was the highest project, which was almost $370 per square foot. So we all know that's a pretty substantial project. The lowest happened to be a private residence that was a little bit under 80. That was, it did receive special approval through a process as part of the development plan, but the next one would be the Epic Gateway project. So that would have been their first of 3 buildings on Main Avenue by the roundabout there in 2nd Street at $114 per square foot. And then moving on to rehab, the highest per square foot investment for rehab was High Road Partners, which is just about a block south of us. And then the lowest was Harvest Capital over towards the west side of downtown. So with that chart, we are curious if the board thinks there are any other data points to include, any items that stand out, or anything that the board would like to discuss further.
Madam Chair, can I just, I think it'd be good to talk to the potential developers like Mr. Bartram just about the numbers. Are they reflective of the market? And I do think it's important for us to, because obviously, like we just talked about earlier, building costs are much different than they were even 4 years ago, the construction costs, but then interest rates, I don't know how we can include that because that impacts building too. I mean, now it's much more different. The financial costs of building are way different than 5 years ago. And so I don't know how we can, and I don't know if you agree with that, but how we can reflect that because I think that's having an impact on lots of things just from our own experience. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Good thought, Commissioner Pepcorn, that, yeah, we aren't necessarily the experts on the building, so some input would be helpful.
Sure.
Maybe for the chair and the board, one of the things that we would like to propose as we talk about the plan update process, so it's technically due at the state on December 2nd. And so we kind of work backwards from that date because there's a Cass County and school board verification that we need, or confirmation that we need. But like last year, what we're proposing, or like last update, what we're proposing is, kind of a survey and outreach and open house with our development community as well as landowners. But we do think besides thresholds, as we talked about last, 6 months ago, which we don't expect anybody to remember 6 months ago, is probably geography and thresholds are probably the most, topics that require the most engagement with the board and staff, and to really kind of try to match up those visions of these long-range plans with the goals we're trying to accomplish. So we're proposing, normally we would meet next, our next board meeting would be, and I don't know if this was in your next steps discussion or anything, maybe I'm jumping ahead.
You're good.
So I think August 28th is our next scheduled meeting. We would like to propose we meet and have more of a working session, maybe in the Meadowlark room. It's of course open to the public, but it allows a little bit more dialogue with the dry erase board, things like that. And we kind of just talk a little bit more about how to your point, Chair Mathern, the syncing up our plans and documents a bit, and then also there's probably some other Renaissance Zone board like coordination, and the city's also doing like a more holistic boards and commission updates and onboarding, things like that. And so we're proposing, if it works for people's calendar, a August 28th meeting, as well as a September and October meeting, to just use those for kind of working sessions if we don't have an application, to kind of as a avenue for staff to do that kind of update and coordination with you, and check in on questions like this that you might have considerations for or want to dive in deeper for.
I think that'll be helpful, having that working session.
Sorry, Megan, I jumped way ahead of you.
Madam Chair, can I add one more thing real quick?
Go ahead, Commissioner.
If it would be okay, it would be good for the planning department to do like an executive summary for everybody here on the new, the long-range plan and the land development code, because not everybody here is aware of all the things going on. And the other thing, which you already know, is we have to make sure that the Renaissance Zone is compatible, and we're doing all the things that we're trying to accomplish with that, just like the economic development, EDIC, and anyway, so we're all heading the right direction. But I do think a lot of us, we're not, it's repetitive to you, but it's new for most of us. So if that would be possible, and you don't have to go through the whole thing, but just kind of a summary, and especially how it applies to the Renaissance Zone. So I am sorry for talking so much, Madam Chair, and you can poke me in the side whenever you want me to be quiet. Thank
I'll
you.
bring my stick next time, Commissioner. No, actually, your input is very helpful. You've got a lot of knowledge. Megan, go ahead. Is there anything
No,
else?
unless the board has any
Okay.
more questions or comments, we'll keep moving on. So we wanted to then go into a little bit about the analysis of the last 10 years. And so for, in your packet, you'll see two charts that I'll have up here. We'll talk about new construction projects. So we wanted to see, what have been the trends, what have been the averages in those last 10 years. So overall, in the last 10 years of projects that are either have been approved or complete or either are under construction right now, average to be about $188 per square foot. And so we're getting closer to that doubling of the investment threshold requirement. Taking the first 5 years of that 10 years, so 2014 to 2019, 132. And then the back half of those 5 years, 19 to 24, is 196. And then the 3-year average, because we also wanted to see with COVID and impacts in construction that Commissioner Pepcorn was talking about, brings it up a little bit more to 199. And so we can very clearly see that trend of going upwards. And so we're almost double, projects are almost averaging double of what the minimum requirement of investment is for new construction for today. Any questions on that? We'll go on to rehab. So same timeframes here. Our 10-year is about $82 a square foot. 5-year from 2014 to 19 is just under 90. 5-year 19 to 24 is 66. And then the last 3 years is 65. So interestingly here with rehab, projects are trending down. Could be for a number of reasons, but that's how projects are kind of moving. Any questions on rehab or averages there?
And I'm going to hate myself for even suggesting this, but when we're contrasting numbers over a decade or what will become more, is there a way of making an inflation adjustment to the latest numbers so that we're comparing apples with apples versus?
Sure.
As we've been talking, we're seeing a quick escalation of construction costs, and so it may over portray things, not making those numeric adjustments.
Sure, thank you. And that was, it's probably very tiny print, but that is one of the things that we noted is that we have not adjusted for inflation in that. So, kind of taking those numbers with a grain of salt. We could try to do that. We could bring that back at the next meeting for you if the board wishes to do that. But thank you for pointing that out. All right, unless there's anything more. So we've got some discussion questions for the board. One, should investment thresholds be increased? And so it just goes, those two kind of pullouts are how over the last 3 years, projects have doubled for new construction and increased by 62% for rehab. So question one is if your board is ready to discuss based on Member Brashani's comments, but just the question of should they be changed?
Madam Chair, can I jump in?
You may.
Can I just ask Kim, can you just leave these questions open-ended? Because we were not aware we were going to be tested this morning. And so I think we need a little bit of time to,
Multiple choice.
no, and even though it's 8:45, that's still a little bit early for some of us. And so I do think, I hope you don't take this as not answering questions. I just think we need some time to digest this, and then maybe this is something we can talk about as we go forward. I don't know, if that's okay, Madam Chair?
And Madam Chair, reflecting Commissioner Pipcorn's comment, it would be interesting to see when the figures used in the original analysis, if we had those adjusted as a benchmark to look at the numbers. I think that would be monstrously helpful because things that look like they've doubled probably haven't doubled at all.
Will that be difficult to do you think, Dr. Brashani, with, your construction inflation might be a little different than overall?
That was my comment. I'm almost going to hate myself for bringing this topic up because it can quickly become complicated.
Okay.
And what I can recommend to the board is we do, so this is where, to Commissioner Pepcorn's point is, we have a consultant as part of our growth plan and also a consultant as part of our downtown plan that are financial experts that could be able to, and as well as our, the group we use as part of our economic development TIF review. So there are financial experts out there that could do a little bit deeper analysis if that's the type of information you're seeking. And we could talk more about that at the kind of the workshop next time. So these are, what we can do is send these PowerPoints if you don't have them already, so you have the questions for consideration.
As long as we don't need to resolve this today or make a decision, I agree. Let's give this some thought and not just jump into something.
Sorry to talk over you.
No, go ahead.
So I think the idea today is really to learn from the board each board has been different. How deep dive do you want to do as a board versus, and I think the last update, the board was very comfortable with staff just making a bunch of recommendations, and we stayed pretty high level. And so I think it's really, there's a lot of philosophical elements to consider as part of that. And again, to Commissioner Pepcorn's point, we'll follow up this email too with, you should be getting updates from Kim Citrowski in our office about the growth plan. And, but there's some interesting additional information that I think you'll find interesting that we will send to you. So we'll get you guys caught up to date on the growth plan, which will help frame maybe some other bigger questions.
Thank you. Any other questions or discussion? No? Okay. Did you have anything else, Megan?
No, we don't have anything more other than, as you know, we'll meet more next month and we'll have some further discussions. So thank you.
So if you're sitting on a lawnmower or just driving to the lake, give some thought, and when we meet next month, we'll have a good discussion. Next on the agenda, other business. Is there anything? If none, we will adjourn and meet August 28th. And you'll just let us know location, maybe Middle Lark Room. Okay. Thank you, everyone, for coming. Enjoy the month.
Thank you.